adjourned until 12 o'clock.
Minutes later, Daley sent the National Guard into the streets to back up the weary Chicago police. The demonstrators had massed across the street from the Hilton Hotel, which housed the Humphrey and McCarthy headquarters, as well as hundreds of delegates. The crowd was bigger and more vocal than on previous nights, and the police, overwrought, were easily triggered. Late into the night, Tom Hayden rallied the crowd.
Tomorrow is the day that this operation has been pointing for some time. We are going to gather here. We are going to make our way to the amphitheater by any means necessary.
Wednesday, August 28th. All the passions that had streamed into Chicago would be exhausted. By day's end, the politics of law and order would win out over the politics of protest.
Wednesday is the day that it's all about. This is what 1968 has come to. This is the day that the war is to be ratified and Humphrey is to be nominated.
It would have been best for us if that whole day had never existed, had been blotted out from the calendar. The whole day's debate was a negative for us. There was nothing good which could have come out of it.
At noon, the debate over Vietnam began.
There's a minority among us, represented over in Grant Park, who would substitute beards for brains, license for liberty, and they would substitute riots for reason.
The anti-war forces now had their chance to argue their case before a national audience.
This is the moment of truth for the Democratic Party. The struggle on the floor of this convention will determine whether we have the courage to say that we were wrong, and even greater courage to chart a course towards peace in Vietnam.
I am supporting a plank that gives the American voters some hope for an end to this miserable war. We are not outside the mainstream of the Democratic Party. We agree with the voters in every Democratic primary. Stop the war.
At the same time, at the bandshell in Grant Park, 15,000 people had gathered for a rally that the city had grudgingly authorized. But the legality of the gathering did nothing to reassure the police.
There was a group of policemen, and they were in a fighting mood by then. I noticed their gloves, and there's a type of glove that they fill with shot. Birdshot, and it makes makes a punch be a very damaging thing. And I yelled at them, and I talked to their commander and told them to make these guys drop these things. And they did. They put them all on the ground when I told them to. But it was that same group that about an hour later went sailing into the crowd.
As the rally got underway, a teenage boy climbed the flagpole near the bandshell and lowered the American flag.
The police see this terrible thing that's happening to the American flag, and they decide to come in and make an arrest. And as they arrest, they blow the crowd away that's around the flagpole and move in with great force and pull this person out.
The arrest riled the crowd.
Get a picture throwing the rocks. Go on.
The protest organizers felt they were losing control.
Sit down. All right.
I told people, sit down, don't throw anything. That's exactly what they want. They want to start a riot.
They are provoking us, but we do not want to confront them now. Move back, please.
To prevent a confrontation, Rennie Davis rushed over to set up a line of marshals between the police and the restless demonstrators.
And then I turned with a bullhorn to face the police and acknowledge that we have a permit for this and we're asking the police to withdraw to relieve the tension. Well, that just really set everything off.
Here they come.
As they approached me, many policemen shouting, really, kill Davis. And it had that word kill had a certain ring to it that was not just a slogan.
The police targeted Davis and beat him unconscious.
And then all hell broke loose. The police started marching into the crowd, but they were marching in phalanx and simply beating up or beating back anybody that was in their way.
This assault in broad daylight was a turning point. 4 days of running battle had fractured the protest leadership. David Dellinger believed in the symbolic power of a peaceful march to the amphitheater. He never wavered in his commitment to nonviolence. But Tom Hayden was abandoning that position and now urged guerrilla tactics in the streets.
The people are going to line up to try to march out, and at that point they're going to be tight enough on this side for us to come in and start just telling them in small numbers to move to the loop. I was trying to keep my head while I was going out of my mind. I was reacting to the fact that Rennie was down, bleeding somewhere, that I thought Dave was leading us in his good-natured way into a deadly trap where we would all be arrested.
As Dellinger tried to calm the crowd, Hayden confronted him.
He came up and said, we are taking over the platform and the microphone now because the police have done these terrible things, and you kept calling for nonviolence, and that's not realistic. Finally, I looked him in the eye and said, that's not true. I'm not giving up the microphone.
Tom Hayden grabs the microphone away from Dave Dellinger. In a kind of passionate anger, he tells the audience, listen, if blood is going to flow, let it flow all over this city. Let this whole stinking city be disrupted and violated. He lets it all loose in that speech.
They're not going to let us out of this park in any organized way. You should float out in small groups. Don't get trapped in some kind of large organized march which can be surrounded. I'll see you in the streets.
Davis getting hurt changed Tom Hayden's perspective on what was happening in Chicago. He started to really believe, I think, his most wild rhetoric. The police were like the Gestapo in Germany. Something was really wrong. You could be killed here for no reason.
It's going to be Warsaw Ghetto.
Yeah, but the point is that will develop.
I changed into a wacky disguise. I think I had on a beard and a football helmet. My goal is very primal, to get back to the Conrad Hilton so that if they were going to beat us up or gas us, that it would happen in full view of the convention delegates and the American people.
A few demonstrators followed Hayden to the Hilton, but many, 6,000 in all, chose peaceful protest and lined up behind David Dellinger.
People wearing helmets should move to the outside of their lines.
Waiting for them was a line of policemen. Dellinger tried to negotiate with the police. He had done this in other cities where officials ultimately had relented.
There'll be no march. There'll be no march. There's no permit to march.
Chicago's police had been told that the demonstrators fully intended to disrupt the convention. What they had heard at the bandshell only inflamed their fears.
There will be no march today.
I felt that I had led this group of people into a trap. People who had been committed to nonviolence were now saying it doesn't work. they killed Martin Luther King and we've got to take on new methods. I just felt like a total failure.
The police began to break up the line. Thousands of demonstrators headed for the bridges leading out of the park. There, they were stopped by armed units of the National Guard. The Guard was under orders to keep the protesters away from the amphitheater and the delegate hotels. As the demonstrators were being kept at bay, the delegates were finally voting on the peace plank and the direction of the war.
On the minority report, the yeas are 1,041 and 1.
The peace forces were handed a crushing defeat.
And the minority report is not agreed to.
The convention had voted to support the war. Humphrey's nomination was a foregone conclusion. The rebels broke into their anthem. To drown them out, party managers directed the band to strike up another tune. Democrats could no longer listen to each other.
We were desolate. All of the work that we had done, all of the effort we had made had, it seemed to us, come to naught. And although we knew better, I suppose, in our minds, our hearts were broken.
I don't remember if it was day or night. I don't remember who was there. I just remember all of a sudden the floor was empty. I mean, I don't even remember the people leaving. And there was a group of people marching in a circle in front of the podium, and they had flags. And I got up and I started to march with them. And I eventually held one of the flags. We marched around. I remember I was sweating. It was like I was in a football game or some kind. It was just a tremendous emotional outlet. I don't think anyone said anything. We just did it.
By evening, Mayor Daley's deepest fear was coming true. 7,000 demonstrators had made their way to the intersection in front of the Hilton.
There were taunts and ugliness. It was designed to provoke. It was designed to arouse. It was designed to show hatred, cursing, anger, fury.
You can't ask us to protest politely so that you can dismiss us. We're going to protest with every fiber of our being, and that kind of sense allows you to go back and put yourself in the way of a billy club.
I really don't know what started the intersection to go up for grabs, but the whole place just went up for grabs.
A half an hour into the standoff, the police began to retake the intersection.
We were ordered to sweep the street and clear the street, and that's what we did.